السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. إنه من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد. Recap again from last lesson. So we covered the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. What are the benefits of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah? And we covered how the Treaty of Hudaybiyah meant that the Muslims were now, the new Islamic state that they created, were now regarded as a legitimate state, and they were by the biggest enemies, the Qurayshis. And they regarded them as equals and recognized them as a legitimate state for them to be able to to negotiate with them and make peace with them. It was by that time, with Hudaybiyah, Quraysh were starting to lose power. They were still very powerful, but they had not. They were afraid that the Muslims now had increased in strength, especially after the Battle of Al-Ahzab. They signed the treaty, and the rate of conversion skyrocketed in that first within 2 years. 7,000 people had converted, compared to 3,000 people from the beginning of the Dawah up until that moment. Only 3,000. After the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, in 2 years, 7,000. The treaty meant also tribes all around the region could ally themselves and join forces, ally themselves with whoever they wanted, and there'd be no repercussions. So a tribe wanted to convert to Islam or join the forces with the Muslims, there was no problem. Quraysh had signed that treaty, and so likewise anybody wanted to join forces with the Meccans, they were also free to do so. And also meant that the caravan routes were now, the Qurayshi caravans now could travel freely to north, to Syria. Because before they had to pass by Medina, and the Muslims in Medina prevented that for a long time. These trade caravans from traveling to north. Many people now within Mecca started to seriously think about converting to Islam. People such as Khalid ibn Walid, Amr ibn al-As, and Uthman ibn Abi Talha. And also, now that the Prophet has been able to secure one front, he was now able to concentrate his energy towards another enemy, big enemy. That was the Jews of Khaybar. The Prophet also, after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the first thing he did was to write the famous letters. He wrote to all the leaders of the area, the Byzantines, the Persians, etc., all the kings and emperors of the region. The reactions were very different. There were good reactions, such as the king of Abyssinia, King Najashi. He even converted to Islam. The governor of Egypt, Al-Muqawqis, he didn't convert, but he treated the messenger of the Prophet with respect. He gave him gifts, and he even said that he expected the Prophet to appear, but not in the Arabian Peninsula, around Syria. Heraclius, the Roman emperor, also treated the messenger well, and he even knew that the Prophet was real. The messenger he had around the same time he had a conversation with Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan had arrived with a caravan from Mecca, and the emperor had a one-on-one conversation with Abu Sufyan, asking about the Prophet Muhammad, all kinds of questions, and he came to the conclusion that he said that the land that we are standing on now, that he will control this land in future. Meaning that the Romans would lose that land, control of that land. The Muslims will come and take it. And I spoke about Kisra or Khusro, in the Persian emperor. His reaction was the most childish and the stupidest reaction of all. When the messenger arrived with the letter, he read him the message. And he said, how dare this person, this Prophet, Muhammad that is, put his name before my name on the letter. Because of that, he rejected the message. He cut the letter and tore it up into pieces. And the Prophet said, when he heard about that, he said, may Allah tear up his kingdom. And that apparently is a copy of the letter sent to Egypt. I don't know how they preserved it, but maybe it looks genuine. Heraclius, the Roman emperor, was a very religious Christian. He knew the religious texts very well, and he didn't accept Islam. He stayed on his religion, on his own religion, but mostly because he knew that if he were to convert to Islam, the people would overthrow him and maybe kill him. And there's an interesting story where he had a private conversation with the Archbishop of the empire, a man named Saghatir. So Archbishop is supposed to be one of the highest ranking in the bishops in the Roman Empire. And the Archbishop said he already accepted the Prophet as a true prophet, and he was ready to convert to Islam. And he went out in front of in the court in front of all the other people and declared his shahada, and he got killed on the spot. And this was a high-ranking person from the church. That's the scene from the movie where the messenger of the Prophet meets the Roman emperor, the Persian emperor, sorry. And there was a slight discrepancy in what he actually said in the movie and what he actually said in real life. What I just mentioned, that how this person put his name before my name on the letter. In the movie, he said, calls the messenger, "You're a barbarian from the desert. You've come to teach the Roman Persian emperor how to make prostrate." Different to what is actually in the books, in the historical account. Soon after the Prophet sent out those letters, a couple of weeks later, the Prophet marched out of Medina with an army towards Khaybar. So Khaybar was a large Jewish settlement, 100 kilometers north of Medina. Now Khaybar had given refuge to a lot of Jews who left Medina, Jews who had been hostile, antagonistic towards the Muslims. They found refuge in Khaybar. And not only that, but they had also been instrumental, helped out the Ahzab army in organizing the army of the Ahzab, the Khandaq army, the big army of 10,000 that marched, laid siege to Medina for 1 month. And the Prophet knew that he couldn't leave them alone. He had to do something. He had to teach them a lesson and bring them so they wouldn't do what they did again, to raise a new army and go march onto Medina again, lay siege to Medina. So he marches out with an army of only 1,500, a relatively small army, to go and conquer Khaybar. It was actually 172 kilometers from Medina. The Prophet tried to reach Khaybar as quickly as possible, so that the people of Khaybar would not had less time to prepare themselves, and also the hypocrites in Medina had secretly sent a message to Khaybar, warning them that the Muslims are coming to fight you. At Khaybar, the first fort, Khaybar is a series of fortifications, and it's not just one fort. So the Prophet, when the Muslim army arrives, the Prophet at the first fort, what does he do? I forgot to mention this story last time. The Prophet asked the Muslims, "Where is Ali?" He's talking about his cousin, Ali ibn Abi Talib. The people said, he's suffering, he's got an eye infection. He said, "Bring him here." And before that, he said, his famous hadith, he said, maybe you know it better than me. He said, "I will hand this flag," he had the flag of the Muslim army, he said, "I will hand it over to somebody who loves the Prophet and Allah, and whom the Prophet Allah love him." He didn't mention him by name initially. And then he gets the people to bring Ali to him, Sayyidina Ali towards him, because even though he had an eye infection, and they brought Ali in front of him, Sayyidina Ali in front of him, the Prophet actually spat on his eyes, and because he spat, his eyes were cured. The infection went away. Another miracle of the Prophet. The first fort was Naim, and there was a duel before the fighting. A Jewish man named Marhab, a giant of a man, this big, strong man came out to fight on a duel with the Muslims. He killed the first Muslim who fought against him, Amir ibn al-Aqwa, and then he fought against Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Ali managed to kill him. The second fort was As-Sa'b ibn Mu'adh, name of the fort. That's another interesting story, that the Muslim army didn't come with enough food. They were starving. And so they had slaughtered a donkey, and they were cooking the meat of the donkey, and the smell started to come out, and people smelt it. The Prophet smelt the smell of the meat cooking. He asked the Muslims, what are you cooking? They said, donkey meat, donkey. He said, get rid of it, do not eat it. It's not halal, it's haram. And that's actually an example of something that is haram, which is not mentioned in the Quran. Quran nowhere says that donkey meat is haram. We only know it's haram because the Prophet taught us. And this goes against a number of people today who say that they reject hadith and they follow the Quran only, which is nonsense, because the Quran not all the details that we've in our religion come in the Quran. Many of the details come from the Sunnah, the actions of the Prophet and the hadiths. So, and this is one example. Donkey meat. The Prophet made a dua, and even though the Muslims were starving, they got rid of the meat they were cooking. They disposed of it, and they fought and conquered that fort. And the Prophet, because he made a dua of Allah to give them food and make them victorious, and give them food and meat. And when they conquered that fort, it was full of food, the food that they needed. And they ate very, very well, filled their stomachs, and they were able to fight again. A couple of other forts, Muslims ended up conquering each fort one by one. In the last few forts, they surrendered. And they negotiated with the Prophet, asked him if they could remain living in Khaybar, and they would. They knew the land. They said, we are very good at farming. We know this land. Please let us stay. The Prophet gave them permission to stay. However, not every Jew was happy. Was happy with the Prophet. They still tried to kill him. They poisoned a bit of meat that they had given the Prophet to eat, and the Prophet ate a bit of it, and another Muslim ate from that meat. That other Muslim died from eating that meat. And the person who presented the meat was a Jewish woman. She was executed. These are just some pictures of some of the forts in Khaybar, and you can see how difficult it is for an army to be able to conquer. And it's a placed on top of a hill, very good location to defend themselves. And there's another scene from Khaybar, and it shows you the area is full of trees and vegetation. It was good for grazing crops. They had water, they had fertile land. And that's the recap. Okay, so now we're talking briefly about how the power of Islam is now increasing exponentially. The Prophet had been able to neutralize the threat from Quraysh. He had ended the threat of the Jews. The Muslims were increasing in strength day by day now that they signed the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The only significant enemy left was the tribe of Ghatafan. Ghatafan had been one of the tribes that contributed massively to the Ahzab army that laid siege to Medina. So the Prophet's goals now, I think in the 7th year of the Hijrah, to make da'wah after the truce with Quraysh, and his Prophet would send out more people to other areas, to other tribes, to talk about Islam. And also the second objective was to eliminate the danger of the tribe of Ghatafan. Now, in order to achieve these two goals, the Prophet believed he had to display power to the rest of everybody, to the Arabs, to the other nations as well. And this is because not only was of course, Islam is a beautiful religion, but not everybody is restricted to a beautiful, will respect you. Some people respect power instead. When you show them strength, they will respect you. The Prophet marched towards Ghatafan, the relatively small army, 400 to 600, and to the area where the Ghatafan were, and they found that the journey was very difficult to get there. When they got there, they found that men had run away and abandoned their homes. And it's known as the Battle of Dhat al-Riqa'. Now, an interesting story, the Muslims have arrived at Ghatafan, they're sort of occupying the area. There's a grove of trees there. The Muslims stay, and as I said, the journey was very difficult, walking there, and they were very tired. So they all were resting or sleeping, and then Rasulullah was sleeping, I think, near a tree, when a Bedouin from the tribe of Ghatafan sneaks in, goes to where the Prophet is sleeping, and raises a sword. The Prophet is under him, and he's able to strike the Prophet and kill him. The Prophet wakes up and sees this person in front of him with the sword, and the person, this Bedouin Arab, says to the Prophet, "Who's going to protect you from me now?" Well, he's raising the sword in front of him. And he said, "Are you afraid of me?" First he asked him, "Are you afraid of me?" The Prophet said, "No, I'm not. I'm not afraid of you." Then he said, "Who's going to protect you from me?" The Prophet replies, "Allah will protect you from me." Now, we don't know exactly whether the sword fell from his hand or he put it, sheathed it back into the scabbard. But the man this person was just shocked by what the Prophet's replies, and in the end he left the Prophet, went back to his tribe, and he told them what happened, and I think he converted, and he went and told the other people about what happened, and this helped the Islam to spread amongst the tribe. Another time, the people were, I think at night, people sleeping, the Muslim army was sleeping. Abbad ibn Bishr radiallahu anhu in the Muslim army was praying, and someone again probably from Ghatafan shot him with an arrow from a distance, and the man is praying. He gets shot, it doesn't move, he keeps praying. He gets shot again, a second arrow hits him. Again, he doesn't stop praying. He gets shot a third time. He doesn't move. And then he finishes the prayer. And then he goes to see another Sahabi, and he wakes him up, maybe to help him. He's bleeding. And the person asks him, "Why didn't you come to me earlier?" He's bleeding all over the place, all over his body. So Abbad replies, "I was reciting a surah from the Quran, and I couldn't stop." This is how dedicated they were to their prayers. Even though he was probably in pain, but the Quran, because he was reciting the Quran, he was able to continue praying. That was Battle of Dhat al-Riqa'. The Muslims returned to Mecca, to Medina, victorious. Where is it? Yes. And it's now been 1 year since the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, and the agreement at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was that the Muslims had initially gone to do Umrah the year before, and because of the treaty, they agreed to not continue doing Umrah. They would go home, and 1 year later they'd come back and do Umrah. Quraysh would permit them to enter Mecca. The Prophet this time comes out. He's doing what's called Umrah al-Qada, the Qada or Qaza, I think you call it, Umrah of Qaza. The Prophet travels now with 2,000 people, all intending to do Umrah. When they march out of Medina, though, they march out heavily armed, ready for a fight, with proper armor and weapons and armor. When they arrive just outside of Mecca, they lay down all their weapons and the arms to one side, and because they're making Umrah, and they enter Mecca without weapons. And of course they leave some people, about 200 people, to guard those weapons. The Prophet did that on purpose to show strength, power to the Meccans. So the Muslims now are saying the Talbiyah, Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik. They're entering Mecca in large numbers, and they're all saying it together. Again, giving the impression of that they are united and strong. And they go inside into Mecca. Now, Meccans at the same time, before the Muslims entered, they all evacuated Mecca. They left Mecca empty for the Muslims. Something completely unthinkable only a few years earlier. The Muslims, the Prophet and the Muslims had been, before they left Mecca, they were treated very badly. They perform the what's it called, the tawaf, and they do the umrah, and they stay in Mecca for 3 whole days. And during that time, not only they're praying together in Jama'ah, the Prophet even he gets married. And all this while the Meccans are watching from outside Mecca. I believe it was Seerah Maymuna radiallahu anha. Yes. On top of that, the Prophet tells Bilal, Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah radiallahu anhu, to climb on top of the Kaaba and make the adhan. This was during the Umrah, not after the conquest of Mecca. Of course, the Meccans are watching this and they're horrified. Because Sayyidina Bilal used to be a slave, a black slave. And he's now on top of the Kaaba, the most sacred object, even to the pagan Arabs. He's standing on top of it making the adhan. And on top of that, again, to project power, show power, the Prophet orders the men to expose their right shoulders. So their entire right arm is exposed. The muscle, the stronger arm. Show the muscles. And this is because there's been a rumor amongst the Meccans, that the Muslims there'd been a fever. They were all sick and weak. So the Prophet, to dispel that myth, that rumor, he told the men to not only expose their right arms, their muscular arms, but to walk quickly as well, the tawaf, not just to walk slowly. To show that the Muslims were not only not weak and sick and weak, they were strong and healthy. And also, again, Abdullah ibn Rawaha radiallahu anhu was, when the Muslims were entering Mecca, Abdullah ibn Rawaha was in front reciting poetry. And you may recall the Arabs, had an obsession with poetry. Poetry, they would say poetry at any occasion, even if they were about to get executed, they would recite lines of poetry. So Abdullah ibn Rawaha was in front saying, make way, using poetry. Make way, the Muslims are here, get out of the way, and other beautiful, some lines to show that the Muslims were not afraid and they were strong. The Muslims finished their Umrah and they would go home. Of course, one of the persons watching these people, the Muslims in Mecca, was Khalid ibn Walid. In fact, all of these people were watching. And as I said, Islam was increasing in their power. The Meccans now could read the writing on the wall. They could see that the Muslims were increasing in power. Even Abu Sufyan, when he went to have his one-on-one conversation with the Roman emperor, Abu Sufyan realized that even the Roman emperor was afraid of the Muslims. Even the Roman emperor recognized the power of the Muslims and the Prophet was a true prophet. This all had affected the people of Quraysh. It made a huge impression. So Khalid ibn Walid finally is now, as I said, he can see what's going to happen, but he's not ready to convert to Islam yet because of his position in Mecca and in Meccan society. So when the Muslims were in Mecca, Khalid ibn Walid's own brother, I think Al-Walid as well, Ibn Walid, went to his house in Mecca and wrote him a letter because he couldn't find his brother. He was looking for him. In the letter he said, his brother tells him, how come you're not Muslim yet? You're intellectual, you've got a brain. How have you not converted to Islam? And he says, the Prophet was asking about you. And he said that he's ready to accept you into Islam, and he knows that you are very good, you are very, not only a smart person, but you have special abilities as a fighter, as a warrior. And this all convinced him to convert to Islam. And it was at that time that he met a couple of other persons, because he wanted to go to Medina, travel to Medina to convert, to meet the Prophet. He was trying to find a companion. And he meets up with Uthman ibn Talha, and Uthman ibn Talha also agrees. Now Uthman ibn Talha was from an important tribe of Bani Abd al-Dar, who were the gatekeepers. He kept the keys of the Kaaba. kept it with them for safekeeping. A very important task and prestigious sort of task. So the two, Khalid ibn Walid and Uthman ibn Talha, agreed to leave, they travel together to Medina. Amr ibn al-As, at the same time, he's met, after the Muslims leave Mecca during the Umrah, so Amr says, before he converts, that is, he's meeting with some friends. He says, I'd rather go leave Mecca, because he knows, again, just like Khalid, he knows the writing, he can see what's going to happen. The Muslims are going to come and take Mecca. Most likely going to take Mecca. And he's afraid to leave, to be in Mecca when the Muslims come and conquer Mecca. So he decides, he tells some friends, let's go to Abyssinia. I'd rather live there, away from the Muslims, under the king of Abyssinia. And he said he chose Abyssinia because he had a personal friendship with the king of Abyssinia. So they all travel. Amr ibn As and the friends, they all travel to Abyssinia. So Amr meets the king and he has a brief conversation with him. And the king is already converted to Islam. And the king of Abyssinia makes da'wah to Amr ibn As. He says, how can you reject this man? He received the same law, the same books that Prophet Moses received from God. They call him Namus. So the king is actually convinced Amr to convert to Islam. And then, so Amr then returns all the way from Abyssinia back to Mecca with the intention of going north to Medina to convert. And that's where he meets, on the way, he meets Khalid ibn Walid and Uthman ibn Talha. They all traveled together, all three men traveled to Medina to convert to Islam. The Prophet meets with Sayyidina Khalid first, and Khalid I think he wants to, the Prophet tells him that, I think Khalid was feeling bad because he fought against the Prophet, he went in battles against the Muslims. And the Prophet said, when you convert, all your sins are forgiven. And the Prophet, even when he converts, he gives them the title, Sayfullah al-Maslul, the sword of Allah, the unsheathed sword of Allah. Sayyidina Amr also meets the Prophet. He tells the Prophet to extend his hand to make the pledge of allegiance to him. And then Sayyidina Amr pulls back his own arm, so he doesn't make the pledge. He says, I'll do the pledge on one condition. And the condition is that my sins are forgiven. That's the condition he put to converting to Islam. The Prophet says the same thing, you convert, your sins are forgiven, and there are other things that you can do to get hasanat, to get good deeds recorded for you. And Uthman ibn Talha again also converts. All three men convert at the same time. And that's from the movie. Khalid ibn Walid in front, Amr ibn As behind him, and only the two of them arrive. And there were actually three men. At the same time, soon afterwards, the Arab tribes in the north of the Arabian Peninsula, so north, they're causing trouble for the Muslims. So some Arab tribes are Christian, and they are sort of under the protection or the rule of the Romans. Some other tribes in the north are pagan tribes, also causing problems for the Muslims. They were looting, stealing things from caravans or from people, Muslims. And even one person was, I think, one of the messengers of the Prophet was killed by one of these chieftains of the tribes. So these tribes had to be taught a lesson, and they had to be put under control. The Prophet massed the biggest army to date, an army of 3,000, to be led by Zayd ibn al-Haritha. The Prophet said, they're going to march north and fight against these Arab tribes. And he says, if Zayd ibn Haritha dies in battle, he will be succeeded by Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, and if Ja'far dies, then Abdullah ibn Rawaha would take over the leadership of the army. Now Ja'far ibn Abi Talib is an interesting person because he was the brother of Sayyidina Ali and the cousin of the Prophet. He'd been living in Abyssinia for a long time, and after the Muslims when the Muslims were fighting at Khaybar, before the Muslims went to Khaybar, Prophet sent a message to Abyssinia to the Muslims living there to come back and to go and live amongst the Muslims in Medina. So Ja'far has come back, returned from Abyssinia. He arrives in Medina and he learns that the Prophet and the Muslims have already travelled, gone to Khaybar, to fight at Khaybar. So instead of resting, he's come a very long distance. He travels again, leaves Medina. There was another 100 kilometers to Khaybar to fight. Anyway, so the Prophet has appointed him as the second leader of the Muslim army if the first leader dies in battle. Mu'tah, you can see all the way up there, 997 kilometers from Medina. It's a very longest distance. And not only that, they're traveling in summer as well. So traveling south of, that's Medina there, so below, yeah. So they had to travel nearly 1,000 kilometers in the hot sun, in the desert, all the way to Mu'tah. And now arrive at Mu'tah, and they're surprised. They're shocked, or not shocked, but surprised. The Romans have amassed an army of 100,000 waiting for them. The Arab tribes have amassed another army of 100,000, and they've joined forces. So there's one army now, 200,000, waiting for the Muslims to come, or a Roman army. So the Muslims have an army of 3,000, only 3,000 versus 200,000. So they consult each other, should we go to battle or not? The odds are heavily in favor of the Romans. And they'll decide unanimously to fight. Especially Abdullah ibn Rawaha, he says, we've come all this way. We want to fight, and some of us want to die for sabilillah. We want to die in jihad. This is our opportunity. So they decide, yes, we'll fight. They go to battle. The battle lasts several days. And as the Prophet said, the first two, Zayd ibn Harith and Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, and even Abdullah ibn Rawaha, they die in battle. At that point, they've run out of the leaders that the Prophet had nominated. They all select now, unanimously select Khalid ibn Walid to lead them. The battle is so fierce that Khalid himself says during the fighting he ended up breaking 9 different swords. But in order to achieve something, so the Muslims are not, it's going to be difficult for Muslims to find an outright victory against the Roman army. So Sayyidina Khalid puts into plan a trick to fool the Byzantine army. The two armies have been fighting for several days. So Sayyidina Khalid decides to switch, to rearrange the army. The left wing with the right wing, they swaps them. The rear guard with the front moves them to the front, towards the front, and he sends the cavalry behind the army to raise as much dust in the air. This is all to give the Romans the impression that the Muslims are receiving new reinforcements, new people coming, fresh reinforcements to come and fight. And he swapped the right flank and the left flanks, so the Roman cavalry, the right flank, would not see the same people the next day when they're fighting. They'll see the people on the other flank. They wouldn't recognize them. If they had not rearranged them, they would see the same people and fight them. At the same time, the people from the rear part of the army was in front. Again, the Romans would see completely different faces, people they've not seen before, fought against before. And at the same time, they'll see the dust, they'll think these new reinforcements were coming. And at the same time, Sayyidina Khalid tells the army to gradually retreat, bit by bit by bit, back into, because the battle happened close to the desert. So he deliberately withdraws little by little, and the Romans notice that, and they start to think that the Muslims are drawing them into the desert to lay a trap for them. So the Romans then do not go after the Muslim army. They hold back, and the Muslims are able to retreat, withdraw completely from the battle, and they return to Medina. The Romans also head home. Romans are afraid to go pursue the Muslims. They don't want to travel in the desert. The Romans are not used to the climate of the desert. Whereas the Arab Muslim army, they were Arabs living in the desert, they were used to the desert. This battle left a huge impression on the rest of the Arab tribes. The Arabs were thinking, if the Muslims are able to go stand up against the Romans, a superpower, an army of so huge, how are the rest of the Arabs going to be able to fight against the Muslims? They are not able to, not incapable of fighting the Muslims. That's the battlefield, the modern day site. I think that's the field behind these ruins. So after the Battle of Mu'tah, inshallah, we'll start to talk about the road towards the conquest of Mecca. It's another very beautiful, interesting story. And that's all I had tonight. Any questions, any comments from anybody? Or سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاك الله خيرا.